All right, everybody, welcome to this episode of the Gildre Spotlight podcast. Today we have a very exciting guest. She is also a fellow Gildre member. Her name is Elise Madrick. She's the founder of Cerene, also a coach, a purpose coach. But Elise, if you can give, our listeners a quick introduction of yourself, that'd be fantastic.
Absolutely, and hi Taiga, it's lovely to see you. My name is Elise, and as Taiga shared, I'm the founder and CEO of Serenade, an executive experiences company that helps people become unrecognizable to themselves in all the best ways. I'm originally from Zionsville, Indiana, a small town just outside of Indianapolis. I have a background in social work and developing executive education programs at the Kellogg School of Management at Northwestern, where I previously worked with thousands of leaders from across the globe. So in Serenade, more specifically, we're in the business of human transformation. So we design experiences that I think even the most worldly executives would say are pretty mind-blowing. So you can think of me as a partner in growth, in reinvention, and taking on what I believe to be the ultimate challenge in metamorphosis, which is who we are to ourselves.
Wow, that's amazing. I definitely want to talk about Serenade more in depth. But before that, kind of want to start with your roots in Indiana, from the Midwest. Did you always want to be a founder and entrepreneur? And also, what got you into kind of these more life transformational type of experiences? Was it something rooted in your adolescence?
Well, growing up in a small town in Indiana, no, this was definitely not the path that I had planned for myself. In fact, I thought that I would, and I went on to get my master's after I went to school at Indiana University. I ended up graduating early so I could go work for a year to see if therapy was in fact the thing that I wanted to do. And I thought it was, so I went to grad school, became one, did the thing. And then along the way, life's, and found my way to Kellogg after working in public policy advocacy, really focused on kids and families involved in child welfare. So I kind of went from individual work to more policy work to then, at Kellogg, it's massive scale, getting to work with incredible people all over. But in terms of becoming an entrepreneur, I don't know, Taiga, if you have experienced this before, but I think many people in life have. Those moments in life where you're just completely down, depressed, not sure which way is up. I, about 4 years ago, found myself in one of those. I think so much so that now sitting here today, if you would have known me 4 years ago, you would have said, "Who the heck are you?" but mean it in a really great way. But it was in this really dark period that I pretty much loathed the life that I was living. While my professional career at Kellogg was going well, my home life was messy and I really wasn't enjoying it. I was really unhappily married. I was living in a house that I never wanted, feeling the pressure to have kids that I never dreamed of, and just felt like I was at the bottom of this wallow pit and I could not figure out how to get out. And it wasn't for a lack of knowledge, skills, or tools. I had them all. I was a therapist, for goodness sake. It's quite ironic. But what I realized is I just needed to become this totally different human, and I didn't know how to do that. So I enrolled the people in my life who didn't know me super well, but kind of one layer out, who had already demonstrated to me that they could just see things in me and for me that I simply could not see for myself. So in this process of wanting to become a different human, I had these people who helped me along the way. I went and did a 6-week eat, pray, love trip all around the world, traveling to beautiful places. And it was amazing. And I came back from that trip literally feeling like a different human. I looked in the mirror and I was like, yes, this is it. I got divorced. I sold the house, did all the things that I felt like I was ready to do, that I needed to do to become this different human. And then life just kept on lifing, and I continued to have ups, I continued to have downs like every human. And so what I realized is it wasn't this end goal of being a different human that I was really going for. What I fell in love with was this process of transformation. and like what actually happened there, and what were all the different things that were going on in the background along the way that led me to become this different human. And because I have a background in academia, I had to, create a framework and a methodology and use all the research. And so those same people that I had enrolled in my life to help me get out of this wallowing pit I found myself in are now also my facilitators in Serenade. And so what we did was create this full framework that not only helped me get out of my situation, but has now become the curriculum that we help other people do the same. And it's not necessarily that they have to be in some kind of rut or in some deep, dark place. People do this just for the fun of it. But also, those people were the same ones who could see in me this journey of entrepreneurship that I had not ever dreamed of before. And so starting my own company was not something that I thought was ever something that I could do, would do, etc. And I don't come from a family of entrepreneurs. No one in my family had been one. But now what's really interesting is I'm one of 6 siblings, kind of, it's complicated. And every single one of us is one. Every single one of my siblings, other than my youngest sister, who she's getting there. She's, she's still in college, actually. She's much, much younger than all of us. I think she'll get there soon, but all of us have started our own businesses. So it's a really fun place to be in.
That's amazing. And it's interesting to see that. Are you a middle child? Are you the oldest sibling? Did your other siblings kind of start businesses in lieu of you starting a business? How did that all kind of compile together?
A lot of us started them at similar times. So one of my older brothers, he's had his own business for probably 15 years. He's a photographer and a videographer, and his wife does PR and marketing. So they've had their own thing for a long time. And then my other siblings, I think I went first after the brother who's had it for about 15 years. But then, my other siblings followed suit.
That's very cool.
It's been lots of fun.
So there's a lot to unpack in your kind of career and life trajectory. Want to kind of take a moment to step back to, I think, that darker phase in 2021. I like to kind of follow and practice some things in Buddhism, and I know in Buddhism you have to go through, hard times in order to grow. That sounded like a very hard time. I also think maybe it was the pandemic. A lot of people were in their houses, stuck and everything like that. You're with your loved one all the time. Creates, some tension potentially. What happened in that 6-week Eat, Pray, Love trip that ultimately changed your perspective and outlook on life?
Lots happened. I think leading up to that trip is an interesting thing to look at as well, was living what I now look at as kind of that white picket fence suburbia life, which is the life that so many people want and love, and that's amazing. And I think what I knew about myself from a very young age is that's not the life that I'm here for, and that's not really what's mine to do. And it is the one that I built for myself. I married the person who that's what they really wanted, and I was friends with the people who that is their life and they love it. And like I said, that's awesome for them. And I'm so happy that that is there. And it just didn't feel like mine. It's kind of like staying in someone else's house for a while, and like eventually you start feeling like it's yours. But I never really felt like it was mine. And so at some point I realized, okay, this whole thing that I have built, that I put myself in, and that even took some time, taking full responsibility for the fact that I did it. I put myself in the situation that's creating this madness inside of my head. That is really what prompted this. I just need to take myself out of my environment, the people around me, my physical space, change up all contexts. And so that's why I wanted to go. I felt a little nervous about it. And so the first little bit before I went on my big trip, I went to northern Michigan, where a lot of my family resides, and spent about 10 days just with them. And that was a lot of just feeling all the love and care that it was like this huge hug from all the people in my life that loved me the most. So that was a really beautiful kind of sending off point to go be like, okay, go explore the world and let's see what happens. And I think the most beautiful aspect of this 6-week period was going to different places where nobody knew me. Nobody knew my story. Nobody knew all the stuff that I just left behind. I could show up and be whoever and however I wanted to. And so when I met people, I didn't have to share the deep, dark period of time. While, yes, it was, of course, influential on my life, it's not who I want to be. And so it was a really cool experience just trying on this human that I always dreamed of being that I didn't get the chance of being before.
Was that your first time traveling? It sounds like you were solo. Was that your
Yes.
first solo traveling outside the US?
It's actually not. I had done so once before. When I was in college, I went and lived in Guatemala for a summer. I worked there and stayed there just wanting to. My youngest sister was born there. And so I wanted to go and just experience the culture for a longer period of time. And it was my first time, that was my first time ever traveling alone. And of course, being from a small town in Indiana, it was a very strange feeling. And one of the things that I really craved in my former life that I didn't have was travel. And so the first thing that I knew I wanted to do was hit the road. And I don't think I've stayed off of it since. I travel as often as I possibly can now.
I know once you get that travel bug, it's hard to go back to the normal.
Yeah, can't get rid of it.
I'm down in Argentina, and I came down here for the first time in 2022. And I was living in Seattle, I lived in LA, I lived in Missoula, I was living the American lifestyle. I wasn't married or had a house or anything like that, but I was working 9 to 5, going to the office. And it's just really hard to comprehend the type of lifestyle that you have, that, we have internationally. But with that being said, why do you think international travel is so compelling and life-changing towards people, especially if they kind of they're in that, maybe not in a rut, but just they want that type of, change or that type of epiphany? Why do you think international travel is so important?
Yeah, well, I think of how we are as humans in a bunch of different ways, but one of the perspectives that I take is based on the contexts that create who we are. And there's a bunch of research that's been done around what habits contribute to humans being human. And what came out of some of that research is called context design. And it says that there are 4 contexts that we live within. Systems, which are kind of the laws, the rules that are surrounding us that have us do what we're supposed to do. They are the spaces, which are the physical environments that we put ourselves in. There's social, so the different people that we surround ourselves with. And then if we keep getting closer and closer, then there's us, and more specifically, our mindset. And often what gets in the way for people is their mindset. It's also the mindset that they have in a specific environment. And so when we take someone out of, for example, I'm talking to you from Chicago today. If you remove me from Chicago and go place me in Morocco, where I'm about to go in a couple of months for one of these experiences, I'm not only changing my mindset because I'm in a totally different place and different culture, and so I have to change how I am around that. I'm changing the people that are going to be around me. I'm going to be around 18 new humans. And then I'm also changing the physical space around myself. I'm going to go to a totally different and new country. And then also the systems there, the laws and the rules are different. And so when we take ourselves out of all of our current contexts and put ourselves in a totally different one, we get to just be different humans. And it's such a beautiful opportunity to see how it is as an opportunity than to be kind of trying to transform or trying to shift something in our life while everything else is the same. It's really, really tough to do that. So when you're traveling internationally, you're just making it a heck of a lot easier for yourself.
That makes sense. And just curious, there's a lot of, and I know like a lot of the listeners here are founders, but there are a lot of folks that are kind of attached to the 9 to 5 where they have to work, they have to physically go up to a brick and mortar location or their office, and maybe some of those people are in a rut. What would you recommend for those people that are maybe in a rut in their 9 to 5 that wants that kind of change, but maybe has never, had an international experience?
Yeah. Well, first, I'm going to distinguish change versus transformation because that's a really important distinction that we talk about. So, change from our perspective. And I will say, how we speak about anything that we speak about is that it's not the truth, it's just how we see the world, and it's just one perspective. So, when I think about change versus transformation, if someone is looking to change who they are, they can do that right now, because it is past based, it's in comparison to something that's happened or who you've been. And so, for example, if I wanted to change, I could cut all my hair and I would be changed. I wouldn't be transformed as a human because I'm not going to be a new human. That's the difference, right? So transformation is future oriented. It has nothing to do with your past. So that's just one clear thing, I guess, to explain, which is, sometimes people come to me and say, I want to become the best version of myself. I'm like, great, go do that. We're not for you. Because I trust that you can become the best version of yourself on your own. In fact, I believe you already are. If you're looking to do something totally different and totally new, that's where I can help. Because that's, I think, where people often get confused. And the confusion many times comes from our blind spots, the things that we just don't know that we don't know. And that's a huge part of what we do, is helping bring light to people's blind spots. They operate in the background and they are what they say they are. They are blind to us. And that often is what keeps people held in where they are today. So if there's somebody stuck in a 9-to-5 job and they're not, they're wanting something different, if they're just wanting to change something, then change it. There are things that we can all do to change our situation. But if we want to transform who we are as a human, that's a different thing. And I would invite people to enroll people in their life to help illuminate those blind spots, because we just can't do it on our own.
And
yeah, go ahead.
For your, how did you determine the folks or the people to bring into your life that can help transform you? How did you find those, I don't know, you said 8 or 12 kind of close people around you. And what were the things that they did to help you transform and make that transformation?
Yeah. Well, some of them were close to me. My best friend in the world, her name's Elizabeth, and she was absolutely someone who, as soon as I came to her and said, here's what's happening in my life and I gotta be this other person, she was fully on board and just pushed me from the beginning. Like, okay, you say that you want this, I'm all in, and we're gonna push you to get there. The other people in my life that I enrolled to help me in my own personal transformation, a couple of things. I didn't really know what I was asking for, because the whole process is seeing things that you haven't seen before. And so it's a bit of it's a risky move. You're kind of putting your life in other people's hands. And it's the most important move I've ever made, because those people, they would, for example, offer a possibility that I hadn't seen, such as, hey, what do you think about starting a business where it's not just about your transformation, like everybody can have access to this transformation thing. Or I had always dreamed of becoming a personal trainer, and we in Cerene, we do these 108-day runs of developing new skills. That's a big part of our curriculum. And so I was feeling like I didn't really know what I wanted to take on for my next 108-day skill journey. And another one of my friends said, hey, what do you think about becoming a personal trainer? You said that was a dream of yours. What if you did that? And so I did. So now I'm a certified personal trainer. And so what I'm inviting people in for my transformation, and this is what happens in our community, we're inviting people to just offer us possibilities for our life that we can't see. And then we get to choose whether or not we want to do that and go from there. But it's really, really fun to see what other people can see for you.
Definitely.
So leaning into that over and over again.
Yeah, and are there like specific, practices, or are there specific methods that people can take in and maybe practice themselves to start making subtle transformations day by day?
Absolutely. I think, if you're going all in, and let's say somebody comes to one of our experiences, what they get is the full recipe. Like, here's literally starting with A all the way to Z. Here's how you do this thing. and then we give it to you. So the hope is that once you learn to do this once, you go on to do it many, many more times. This isn't just a one-time game. It's literally a lifestyle. And so our community, we are doing or trying on new skills or developing new skills in these 108-day runs 3 times a year. So constantly at work on ourselves, constantly doing things that challenge us. If people are looking for, a couple of different small ways to start that can become really huge insights, number one is calling up the people in your life and just asking them, what do you see for me in my life that I'm not seeing? And then wait and see what they have to say, because what they could come back with could be completely surprising. It could make sense, but either way, you're getting insights about you that you don't have about yourself from the people in your life that know you. What's really interesting is if you do it with almost strangers. The most interesting response I've ever received is someone told me I should be a Crest toothpaste commercial model.
I can see
That's
that.
not it. That's not the life I'm gonna go lead. But thank you so much.
They're basically just saying you got good teeth and a nice smile.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. It was an interesting response. So I think that's a really great place to start, asking the people in your life, what do they see for you in your life that you're likely missing? And then there are some other activities and just questions that you can ask yourself that start to get you to where some of your blind spots might exist. Things like looking for patterns in our behavior. For example, are there specific things that often upset you? Are there things that consistently bring you joy? Are there things that consistently have you react? And what are those reactions? Do you have the same reactions to things? If so, why is that? So there's a lot of inquiry that we can do about ourselves that I don't think very often we take the time to do for ourselves. But sometimes it can lead us to really interesting questions. And once we identify the behaviors that we are demonstrating, then we can choose whether or not we want to keep them around. We can just choose differently.
Very cool. And I also think talking to other people, whether they're strangers or family members, because everyone always perceives themselves differently than how others perceive them or how others kind of experience based on their life experiences, based on what their lens is. So it's always really good to understand other perspectives from other people.
Yeah, I think so too. I did this really interesting experiment with my team the other day where we each took turns going around the room and asking, how do you experience me? Just generally as a human, as a leader, as your friend, how do you experience me? And what's really comes out of their mouths is really interesting, because exactly what you were saying, Taiga, how I see myself is one iteration. How they see me, mostly aligned, but then some of the things that they said were really, really interesting and worth paying attention to.
Yeah, absolutely. Going back to Serenade, it's your first time starting a business.
It is.
You're organize everything together. How did you get the foundation to understand how to start a business?
Just started trying some stuff. Of course, the best way to learn is to act. And so the more that I just took action, the better. So of course, there's the down in the weeds of creating the LLC and doing all of the back end work, which is really, really important work to learn. But in terms of building the foundation of the business, I think I'm still learning. I think it's a process that we all continue to learn, especially as the world continues to change and the ways that people are changes in reaction to the world. But in terms of the actual business itself, what I was really excited about was this opportunity to acquire a bunch of skills that I had never had before. And in fact, it's one of the big lessons that I've learned. I always considered myself to be someone who is pretty smart, fairly successful, and so I know how to acquire new skills. I know how to get myself unstuck. I know how to do all of these things. And not all of the skills and the knowledge and the tools that I previously had acquired were a match for being an entrepreneur. Because you have to be agile, you have to move really quick, you have to make decisions, and you don't necessarily know the impact. So there's a huge level of risk involved. And I came from higher ed, which is the least risky ever, and it moves at a snail's pace. Even though I will say I was probably the fastest on my team, at Kellogg, and I think my team members had a love-hate relationship with that, but for the most part liked it. But it was also really bureaucratic. And so when I was building Serenade originally and continue to do so, what's really important for me is the people that I'm surrounding myself with. Because I know that as much as I am confident in myself to go get the skills and the knowledge and the tools that I need to succeed, there are just things that I don't know how to do. And there are people that are far more qualified than me that can do those. So I've enrolled a lot of people to help me along the way. I have an advisory board, I have mentors, I have this incredible team, facilitators, other coaches that I work with. I have my own coaches that I work with often. So I think it's just a continuous process.
No, that makes 100. I feel like a lot of people are, building I forgot the term, like building the street as they go, building the road as they go.
Yeah, we're building the plane as we're flying it.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
And first starting out, I know, working in higher ed, jumping into entrepreneurship, was there something that clicked in your mind where like, I know this is going to work. I see product market fit. I went through this myself. And if so, what was that kind of catalyst?
Yeah. Well, before we actually brought this to the market, we of course had to test it to make sure that it really works. And so, of course, we all tested it on ourselves several times. We invited some of our really close friends to also do that. And we did it with individuals and small groups. And the part or the time in which I really knew, okay, this is really something that can help massive amounts of people, is just the role that we play in it. And what I mean by that is the people that come through our experiences, they truly recreate who they are and completely reauthor a story for their future. And there was someone that we worked with early on who came to us with, in a stuck place, had been really, really successful, but was feeling uninspired, wanted to do something different, but wasn't really sure what. He enjoyed his job, but, it's just okay. And when he came through our experience, he told us about this dream when he was a kid of becoming an actor. And he said it was one of the most joyful days he had ever had when he was, I think, 8 or 10 years old. And then in the actual experience, we ask you to choose a specific skill that you want to go to work on for the next, 100 days after the 8 days in person. And all of us were waiting on the edge of our seat, like, okay, he's going to choose acting. And then when it came to him, he said, I'm choosing meditation to go to work on. And all of us thought, you should have just seen everyone's faces. All of us just like, what? Huh? Because we could just see for him that had to be the thing for him. He made him light up. He was so excited when he spoke about it. So when we heard meditation, which of course is amazing and lovely and we should all do it, we were confused. However, it's what he chose. And so he went on, started working on meditation. And about a week after he left, we got a call. And he said, okay, I have a coach that's helping me with meditation. So far, so good. Also, I enrolled in acting classes and I start tomorrow. And since then, Taiga, I kid you not, he goes to acting class every single day. He has 2 agents. He's been in films, commercials, TV shows, and that was just a couple of years ago. So that, seeing people just completely transform who they are and then actually achieve this new thing that they never even thought possible, that is how I know this has the potential to just be completely transformational for people.
That story is literally giving me like goosebumps as I'm hearing it, because it's awesome to see that, someone went through an 8-day program, they're actually changing, and they started, going after their passions of acting, which is super beautiful.
And yeah, and what's really interesting is he didn't stop his old job. Mm-hmm. He kept it, and in fact enjoys it more than he's ever enjoyed it before. And amazing. He's an actor. So he went from this human who was a salesperson, who dreamed as a kid, totally put it aside in adulthood of becoming an actor, to now he's an actor. And then he also sells on the side. It's really, really cool to see what people can create for themselves.
That's amazing. One kind of question that comes to mind is so I see that you have your experiences in Morocco, you have an experience in France, in Dominican Republic. Have you been going to the same locations since your inception a couple years ago, or do you change up the locations, and how do you pick these locations?
We change them up for the most part. Sometimes we'll go back to the same country, but most of the time we're choosing different locations. And the way that I choose them is a process. Whenever I'm designing any kind of experience, I look at 8 different elements that make up every single one of our experiences and which ones do I really want to lean into. So, for example, our Elements program happening in Morocco, I really wanted to turn up the dial of adventure. And in Marrakesh, there are lots of opportunities for amazing adventures that we will go on together. I also really like to turn up the dial of insights and philosophy. Those are 2 of our big elements that we bring into the program. And so I look for places where that is built into the culture of the space. And Morocco has this incredible and beautiful culture and people that is very different than the United States. So coming back to that, taking people out of their context. And I will say, I'm speaking from a place of being in the United States, but we do bring in people from various places all over the world. And the goal is to just put them into a different situation and culture. And again, Morocco does that. And as another example, when we're going to France for our Storycraft experience, it's a little bit different than our typical flagship Elements program because it's less focused on transformation in the sense of I'm going to become a different human. This is how do we get other people to be partners with us in this transformation game that we're playing? How do we have other people so excited about what we say and how we say it that they are going to be our champions in building some kind of movement? Or if you're a leader of an organization, this is a beautiful experience to just come and learn how do we tell really effective stories that have other people see an opportunity for their own growth, for their own transformation inside of the stories we're telling. So for that experience, when I think about the location, I want somewhere where people can be outside, where people can feel inspired, because it's a storycraft experience similar to a storybook experience. I wanted it to be in some kind of old country landscape. So we were staying in this incredibly beautiful castle from, I think, the 14th century. So it just brings some of what we're trying to create for people in the environment itself.
I love that. And then I notice you have, 8 methodologies, 8 days. What is the power of like 8 in your business?
Well, 8 days is a number that we just love, but the number 8 really is connected to the 108 days of our main program. And 108 days is also the amount of days in Amala. So although we don't practice and we are not related to any religion in Cerene, we really like the significance of Amala because it's all about repetition and meditation and the different phases we go through as humans to get through all 108 beads. And so we follow that. And more specifically, we break it down into periods of 40 days, approximately. And we think of it as there's this cocoon phase. So you just finished 8 days of an experience with us. The next 40 days is all about being in that kind of mushy middle cocoon where you're trying to figure it all out. It's a really beautiful time to be in. And then we go into this emergence phase, right? Like a beautiful butterfly comes out of a cocoon. You're doing the thing that you've been preparing for and practicing. And then the final period of time is all about teaching other people. So how do you take everything that you've learned and become a master of it by sharing it with others? Because that's really why we exist, is to get this work into the hands of as many people as possible. Because from our perspective, and this really speaks to our mission as an organization, our perspective is when people are on the pursuit to eudaimonia or fulfilled happiness, they're completely focused on working on themselves, developing themselves, all in the service of other people. And when all of us humans can be working on ourselves and in the service of other humans, I mean, Taiga, can you imagine what our society would be like?
Yeah, be amazing. I mean, it'd be like
Be
Japan.
a
Like,
lot different,
it'd
right?
be a lot different.
It'd
It'd
be
be a lot different.
peaceful.
Yeah, a lot more peaceful, less wars, a lot more product. I mean, it'd be like I don't know throughout Japan, but it'd be like maybe similar to how Japan is, despite the fact there's still a lot of work culture pressure and issues there. But I'm sure it'd be similar to like a very tight knit, organized society with people, feeling fulfilled and an amazing society. But another question: who would
Yeah.
you say Serenade is geared towards? Who are your ideal? I don't want to say customers because I think that's such you're in a business.
Community members.
Community members.
Yeah.
Who is Serenade built for? What kind of community members are you looking for?
The people in our community are curious, they're interesting, and the thing that brings us all together is that we're all in some kind of transition. And I say we because although we, as in the Serenade team, we are the leaders, we are the facilitators of all of this, we are also doing this work with every single one of our community members. So every 108 days, we are doing something right there alongside them. We have the struggles, we have the annoyance of having to practice and we don't want to practice something. All of that we're doing alongside of the people in our community. And most often, I would say the folks that are the types of transitions that folks are in are some kind of career transition. So whether you just started your own company, you're a brand new founder, a lot of folks like that come to us, or perhaps you've exited and you are figuring out what's coming next. A lot of folks who graduate with advanced degrees end up coming to us because they had a job, they thought the degree would be the thing that put them on the map, and then they realize it's actually not what they want. And so they have to pivot. The other more personal experiences or happenings in life that folks often are going through are relationship changes, most often divorce. Also, people who are retiring and figuring out what that third stage of life is going to look like. I had this guy who came through one of our experiences a couple years ago, and he had been this executive at this huge financial services firm for 30 years. And then he came to retirement and realized, I don't actually know what I want this retirement to be for or what I want it to look like. And so he came to one of our experiences to try to get the answer to that question. And thankfully he did, and he's doing amazingly well, with a couple of ups and downs in between, of course. But those are the people in our community, and they're the ones that are committed to this life of trying new things and figuring out what works for us, all in this pursuit of being really fulfilled and giving to the people around us.
Got it. That's amazing. I think there's a lot of folks that need Cerene, and I think that need something that's amazing and transformational, like one of your experiences, your community. It's fantastic. I have a couple more questions, about two more questions.
Okay.
What are you most excited for looking forward to building Cerene?
There are so many different ways to answer that question. I think the thing that I'm most excited for is what opportunities become available in the world. And I know that's a big, grand vision, but that's what I'm operating under. What big, incredible things can happen in the world because of people going through Serenade and realizing that anything is possible if we're doing it together, if we are constantly figuring out how to become new people that are a match for who we need to be for the world. I think there's so much happening right now with AI being the big thing, and there's just always the next big thing. But the thing that no one else can do, AI especially, is to be human. And so if there is a possibility that the people going through Serenade can help each other out-human other humans, that's what we're in for. So I think that's the thing that excites me the most, is just what can be created because of the people in our community. I know that's a bit broad, and it is the thing that keeps me going every day.
I love that. I think it's fantastic. I think we need more, organizations and services like this, just because with the age of AI, the age of technology, we need to be closer together as humans, rather than relying on technology. One last question. If you can give your 2021 self one piece of advice going back, 4 years ago, what would that one piece of advice be?
Ask for help.
Great
I didn't
advice.
do that. I didn't do that until I absolutely had no other option.
And actually, one question out of that, why do you think it's so difficult for people to ask for help?
Pride, for sure. I did not want anyone to know what was happening behind closed doors. I didn't want anyone to know that I felt like a failure because I had committed to this human and then I didn't want to be part of that relationship anymore. So I failed in that. And I didn't want anyone else to see what I created and what I did when out there I thought that I was looked at as someone smart and successful and someone who, could build the life that she always dreamed of. And what I realized is I can't do it alone. And I'm okay with that. Also, sometimes I still get back into that mindset of I have to figure this out. It's all me. And I think, one of the things I think, Taiga, you and I have talked about before is like one of the myths of being an entrepreneur, which is like we have to do it all ourselves. And it's just so ridiculous. The more that we do, I think the more we realize that there's just no way, literally no way to make it in this life on your own. So the more that we can rely on the people around us, who, by the way, want to help, the better.
Couldn't agree more. Having a support system is critical for anyone's success. Please, really appreciate it. One final thing, any final words of wisdom or advice that you'd like to share?
I would say if folks are feeling that feeling of being stuck or not knowing what's coming next, I would say just know that it's not something that any of us do have to do alone. And there are people and places and things that we can do and see and rely on that can help really take us out of wherever we're feeling stuck. And so with that, the last thing that I'll say is if all of that or something in this conversation that you and I had, Taiga, sounds interesting or spurred some kind of, that might be really interesting for me, let's chat, because this is the work we do. Like, this is the life that my team leads, is having these conversations day in and day out. So with that, I will just say thank you, Taiga. This was so much fun. And I'm looking forward to diving in even more to Gildre and to the community and seeing how we can all help each other.
Elise, really appreciate it. I enjoyed this conversation so much. Appreciate your time. I'll share all of your info in the show notes as far as how to get in touch with you. Serenade.life, all the
Thank
information. Really appreciate your time, Elise.
Thanks, Taiga. Take care.
Thank you.